Someone is following me, and I need help. I'm going to try and find a spot in the woods that maybe has service, so I can send this out to anybody who could potentially read it. I think I'm somewhere in western Pennsylvania at this point, but I'm not entirely sure. Once this post goes through, I'm going to try and make a call to the police to try and set up a search and rescue, but I have to keep moving, so I'm not sure how well it would work. My name is Trevor Adams, and I was going into the Appalachian Trail from where it starts in Springer Mountain in Georgia, hoping to complete the whole thing. I had gone on a hiatus from my job to live out my dream of hiking the whole trail on my own, and at this point, it's starting to look like I should have listened to my damn mother and not gotten into my own head about needing to prove to myself that I could do some kind of famously difficult thing before I died. Now I think I might die in the next few hours. Someone is following me, and they're not right. I wish that I could make this sound less stupid than it sounds, but I'll start by telling you my experience from the beginning. So if I go missing, and I can't contact the authorities beforehand, my parents will know what happened. I'm walking as I type this. Apologies if it sounds rushed. I need to get this out as fast as I can. I pulled up at the entrance to the trail around 7:30 a.m. I had stayed in a hotel about a mile away the night before to check all of my gear and food supplies for the trip. I let my friends and family know that I was about to head in and parked and locked my car. The first few days were about what I expected them to be. Beautiful forest, nice people walking along the trail. Several of them wished me good luck when I told them I was out to do the whole trail on my own. A few recommended places to rest, and gave their opinions on the rest stops and resupply points. The trees were gorgeous, and the hills were steep. At the top of every one, I was rewarded with more beautiful views, and more opportunities to take pictures with my phone. I'm by no means a professional, but I thought I did pretty well with the ones I did take. I had packed 3 spare battery packs in my backpack, just in case of emergencies. And now I'm so thankful that I thought ahead enough in that regard. Around the 3rd day, I was really feeling the exhaustion of the trail, so I decided to set up camp a bit early. Typically, I would have liked to find a designated camping site with other hikers, but I thought that a night choosing to disperse camp would be better for me then. I set up my small tent and got to relaxing. Around 8 p.m. the sun had begun to set, and I was getting tired, so I put my book back in my bag and crawled into my tent for a long night's rest so I could feel refreshed for the morning. I checked the batteries in my lantern and then crawled into my sleeping bag. When I woke up, it was pitch dark and the sound of a night wind was slithering through the trees. I'm normally a deep sleeper, so waking up in the middle of the night was an odd occurrence. I instinctively began to move and reach for my lantern, but something told me to stop. It was a gut feeling, a sense of pure wrongness. I had never felt that way before in my life, but it felt so deeply primal that I had absolutely no choice but to remain completely frozen where I was. It didn't help that I had an overwhelming urge to go to the bathroom. I listened and waited. At first it was only the wind, but then I heard a barely perceptible rustle of movement through the grass, right next to my head, separated only by the thin fabric of my tent. I'm not a small guy, so typically I wasn't afraid of most things. But it occurred to me then that whatever was on the other side of the tent couldn't be a wild animal. Wild animals sniffed, rustled. Even if they were being quiet, there was some indication of the fact that it was an animal. But this thing had made a sound, despite deliberately trying to be quiet. I stayed still as stone, waiting for whoever it was to move along, but they didn't. I stayed still so long that I was wondering if anything had actually been there at all, until the clouds that were covering the moon parted themselves, and a shadow painted the side of my tent. It was hard to make sense of at first, because it was so low to the ground. Maybe it was a stick, or a branch that had fallen and rolled to a stop beside the tent, and that's what had woken me up. It made perfect sense. I started to sit up, but the thing twitched what appeared to be a head in response. I froze again. Then I started to make it out. It was a person, on their belly in the grass, but holding themselves up by its hands and toes, still as death. To hold yourself at that position for any length of time with just your hands, arms and your toes would be difficult. But the way this person's shoulders seemed to collapse downward, and the perceived ropiness of the muscles in the limbs, I swallowed, throat dry with panic. Its head twitched again, but unnaturally to the side. This time, I heard a dull crack. Holding my breath, I continued to remain still as I possibly could while it listened, and then it moved in a way I could only describe as a slow loping towards the trees, remaining belly down on the ground the whole time. When I hadn't seen any shadows move for a long time, I gained the courage to move again. As I reached for one of my empty bottles to finally relieve myself, my mind raced at what the thing could have possibly been. I didn't want to consider what it truly looked like, so my brain started trying to rationalize any possible normal explanation. I'd rather delude myself than believe there was some kind of maniac crawling around in the Appalachian forest. It just wasn't normal. It wasn't right. I wanted to forget about the experience as soon as I possibly could, if I could at all. It's safe to say that I set out the next morning, feeling exhausted and not a bit rested. I was beginning to pass fewer people the further into the forest I moved. I was incredibly thankful for interaction with others when I could get it, and I happily stopped to chat when they seemed willing themselves. The deeper I moved into the trail, though, I kept thinking I was seeing things. Through particularly dense patches of trees, I thought I saw movement of something between the branches, high up. I stared once or twice, and thankfully it turned out to just be birds, but I wasn't entirely sure. I decided that it would be best not to camp on my own anymore, and would strictly keep to the designated camping areas and resupply points. Over and over my mind replayed the night that I saw them, and the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't accept the person on the ground to be a person at all. It looked like a person, but no decent person moved like that. And I'm not sure if somebody's body would even allow them to move like that, even after years of doing it to themselves. Either they would have had to have been moving like that since they were a child, or they were something else. Something not right. I'm not one to completely disregard the odd things in life, but I lean more towards rational explanation. I'm always willing to say that unexplainable things exist in a world as big as ours. But unexplainable things are only unexplainable until we find a way to figure it out. Was I just supposed to accept that there was some kind of inexplicable human being in the forest of Appalachia that crawled on the ground like an animal? Was it a spirit of some kind? A manifestation of a curse laid deep within the earth from the hearts and minds of a much older people? I don't know. I started thinking about the movie The Ritual a few times, and had to completely push it out of my mind before I decided to turn around completely and quit the whole journey. I should have then. I know that now. When I made it to the next rest stop, there were a few people camping there, so I set up my tent farther away from the trees, close enough to others to be polite, and started a fire. Warm food usually helps everything in my experience, and I felt much better after I ate. I went to bed early, taking comfort in the sound of distant conversation and good-natured laughter, closing my eyes without a single thought of the thing. In my mind, I now understand that what I experienced that night was a dream, but even now, I'm not entirely sure that it was. I awoke to the sound of my name being whispered sharply at the foot of my sleeping bag, and when I opened my eyes it was there, staring. There was only the extremely dim light from the moon coming through the tent fabric, but it was enough to provide a dull outline in the dark of the thing, crouching inches from my feet. I remember my heart starting to pound and breathing rapidly through my nose as panic overcame me once again. I couldn't see its face, but I saw the suggestion of wide, hollow eyes in the shadows. It was speaking. It was saying the names of everyone I had ever known. My parents, my little sister, my best friend, my best friend's girlfriend, my co-workers, even my childhood best friend, and the names of the people I had once known in middle school, names I no longer remembered. Its voice sounded like the whisper of leaves over dry bark. A light and horrible thing, insistent but sharp. I don't remember passing out, but I must have, because the next time I opened my eyes, I could hear the sound of other campers packing up their things to continue on down the trail. Cool gray, dim light washed over everything in the tent, and I tried to ignore the sight of the muddy footprints at the foot of my sleeping bag. What was at first an exciting and positive experience had turned into something much more terrible, and as I walked through the forest I no longer could recognize the beautiful landscape as being beautiful. All I saw were trees for the thing to hide behind. To watch me from there were trees in all directions, growing out of the earth. For additional enjoyment, please subscribe to our channel to stay updated with our latest content.